You wanted the best, and you got me instead. That's right. I'm Jake. Just me again, by myself, hosting another episode of Kiss My Podcast. I got some news at the top of the hour, because this is a news program now. Remember how last time I said I was only going to do the makeup era of Kiss? Well, have no fear. I'm doing them all, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not doing the live albums because pretty much I'm going to be kind of talking about the live counterparts as I talk about the studio songs, studio versions, which I kind of did on the first album, Kiss. But I was kind of talking to the other Geek Out guys and some of my friends, like, I don't really know the unmakeup era stuff that well. And I was like, well, dummy, this whole thing is about, like, becoming a better Kiss fan and helping spread that knowledge. So why don't I use this podcast to help me kind of understand the unmakeup era of Kiss better? So, and also I wanted to get to the reunion stuff, especially Psycho Circus, because I think that's a really strong album of theirs just in general, and I don't want to skip around. Also, one of my all-time favorite Kiss albums is Revenge, technically unmakeup era. So yeah, I'm going to do them all. It's going to be like 2 years, but it's going to be fun. And who knows, by the time this is over, maybe there'll be another Kiss album. I don't know. Because they said they were never going to do another one after Psycho Circus, and they've done two. So that's kind of some news that we're going to be doing here. And I also have some cool stuff. It's not going to just be me the whole time, because that would be insanely boring. I've reached out to some buddies, some people we've never heard from before, which is really cool. I'm excited about. I'm not going to say who yet, but and then some familiar voices. Some of the Geek Out guys will be around. But let me pull up on my phone though, just to kind of throw it out there. Of the albums I don't have anybody for. So if anyone's listening to this and they're like, "Yo, I really love, Asylum or Crazy Nights, Hot in the Shade, Revenge, Carnival of Souls, Psycho Circus, Sonic Boom, or Monster." Those are pretty much like anything after Animalize. I think everything else is taken. Yeah, pretty much everything else is. But and the solo albums, I'm going to do just a 40-minute episode, about 10 minutes each or so on each of the solo ones. I'm not going to do 4 separate episodes of that, because that would just add more to it, even though we're all having fun here, right? Yes, we're all having fun. So also, another thing I want to do before we jump into Hotter Than Hell this week, which is the album we'll be discussing, is I felt like the last episode was like a little too serious, and I want to try to have fun with this. And I think I was so nervous about having, like, because that was the first podcast I've ever really done by myself. I didn't want to have like any dead space or dead air. So I'm just going to get that right out of the way like right now, and just have some uncomfortable dead space as you're listening to this in your car or at home or whatever. So just embrace the dead air. That was fun. Okay, we got that out of the way. So let's jump in the Hotter Than Hell, man. So they released Hotter Than Hell in 1974, October 22nd. And they recorded in August of 74, same year, at the Village Recorder Studios in Los Angeles. Kind of a interesting thing, because, as we said with their debut album, it really didn't do anything. Really didn't get anyone, really didn't capture people's imagination like the band, like Casablanca Records thought it was going to do. So they jump right back in the studio and record their follow-up album, Hotter Than Hell. The difference is they're not recording in New York. Like I said, they're recording in Los Angeles. Supposedly Paul Stanley had his guitar stolen the first day they were in Los Angeles. They all hated it there. Or maybe not all of them, but I think Paul and Gene were not huge fans of it, because they're so used to the New York atmosphere, and LA and New York are very, very different. So it starts off not in the best kind of setting and vibe for a band that's really needing to hit it big with their second album. So we also get one single. Just one single. If you look back, like on the last episode on Kiss, the debut album Kiss, they had 3 singles. None of them really struck a chord with anyone. I think 2 of them are classics, but this one just has one, and it's released the day that the album's released, October 22nd. It's Let Me Go Rock and Roll. We're going to get into that one later as we get to it on the track listing, but I feel like the band's just really deflated. There's kind of a lack of faith. I think with Casablanca and Kiss, like, they know they're a powerhouse band live, and they're trying to capture that, and they're trying their best. They're still struggling, but you get the same producer who produces the first album, and which is weird because the first album sounds pretty solid, this album sounds terrible. Super muddy. Uh, it almost sounds out of tune at times, and really just a mess. There's a couple bright spots in terms of production, but the drums sound really flat, and it's really unfortunate because there is, like the first album, some really stellar Kiss tracks on here. Tracks that will stay with Kiss and in their live set for almost their entire career, show up on multiple albums, compilations, live albums, greatest hits, all that kind of fun stuff. So it's kind of a bummer that this album, I feel like, in the Kiss community, or the Kiss Army, excuse me, Jesus, is more remembered for its poor production. So without further ado, let's kind of jump into some other things about Hotter Than Hell. The album cover is actually really cool. It's got a Japanese influence to it, and the album itself, the album cover is kind of like the production. It's kind of messy and jarring, and there's a lot of things going on there. But I actually dig the album cover, and I think it works in that setting much more than the sloppy production. The interesting thing is when you see Ace on the front cover, his face is the makeup is airbrushed on because he got in a car accident, and the left side of his face was all messed up, and he couldn't apply the makeup. So if you look closely, the makeup on there is airbrushed and not actually on his face when they took the picture. So kind of interesting thing, and you can kind of see. I mean, for the rest of his life, even when he does have the makeup on, there's a difference. There's a clear difference from really early Ace and post Hotter Than Hell Ace. So again, this album, they're really, really trying to hit it big with this. And unfortunately, the album doesn't do that. I think in the U.S., the highest it reaches is like 100 on the charts. So it doesn't really even break 100, which is crazy because as a civilization now, we know that Kiss is huge, but at this time in 1974, man, they were still struggling. So we got to Choose is the first track. Now, it's written by Paul Stanley. I feel like it's a pretty strong opener, but again, it's going to be I'm going to talk about it a lot throughout the album. The production really holds, I think, this song back a bit. But we do get a strong vocal performance from Paul Stanley. And backing vocals by Gene. But Stanley, I remember, re-listening to this, he sounds really tired on this track. And again, I feel like it's because they really get no time in between recording the first album, touring, and then recording this second album. And the pressure that they have, they're a band that's wearing makeup. People think they're clowns, and they're trying to make something of this. And I don't want to say they're failing, but they're just not connecting with anybody. So it's got to be really frustrating. And again, a New York band recording in Los Angeles, which they've never done before, isn't helping. So it does have that, sexy Paul Stanley flair that most great Paul Stanley tracks have. And he has gone on record actually saying this is one of his favorite tracks. I think it's strong. I think it's kind of like that, sassy, bitchy Paul Stanley vibe throughout it. I like I was saying, check out the Alive version. I think it shows how much of an absolute beast this song is when you hear it on the Alive version rather than the studio one, because again, that production really kind of holds it back. So which is unfortunate. So next we get Parasite. Parasite is written by Ace, good old Ace. Lead vocals, though, of course, are given to Gene, kind of like with Cold Gin. Ace is still feeling really insecure about his vocals. Although we do get a couple songs, which I'll point out later, with backing vocals by Ace, which is cool. I mean, he's kind of like lost in the shuffle, but he is credited as having backing vocals, so he's slowly getting out there. But he has a couple really strong tracks on this album, and Parasite being one of my favorite Ace tracks, one of my favorite Kiss tracks. But before we go ahead to like talking about kind of the studio song, you got to check out the Alive version. The Alive version, again, highlights how heavy and badass this song is. And I've never, like I said on the first episode, I've never really referred to Kiss as a heavy metal band. I think the imagery helps. They do have heavy riffs and songs, but I don't consider them heavy metal. But this is a song that does give them a kind of a strong contender to that genre, because it is just an unrelenting riff, kind of a crazed Gene Simmons on vocals, and it's just a super, super heavy song. But I think also Gene is someone that works really well for singing an Ace song. Um, his vocals again, they're darker and heavier than Paul Stanley, and it lends itself really well to the track. But like I said, overall, great riffs, great solo, and check out that Alive version. The funny thing about Alive is a lot of people consider it kind of the greatest studio album because there's that whole kind of did they record most of it in the studio and overdub things in, and even if they did, it really doesn't matter, because that's the album that finally was able to show the beast that was Kiss in that Alive setting. And Parasite is one of those tracks, kind of like She, that I was talking about on the first album, Kiss, where they used "Let Me Know" towards the end and the coda and stuff. How powerful the Kiss live stuff can be, because it really can. And Alive does that well. So, Jesus, the next song. Okay, I feel like there's going to be every single album I talk about, there's going to be a track that's going to be a head scratcher for like people who aren't Kiss fans or really know a lot about Kiss lore. But the next song is "Going Blind." Okay. And I have my little notes in front of me here. Like, I literally just wrote in the fucking bullet, "This is a weird one. Like, get ready, guys." Because you cannot escape the fact that the song is about a 93-year-old man in love with a 16-year-old girl. Like that. So again, no surprise that Gene wrote this. Although I always heard that the line, "I'm 93 and you're 16" was actually a Paul Stanley thing. I think in his book, which just recently, I think on Twitter, he posted Paul Stanley that sold over 100,000 copies. I'm not sponsored by that book, but go fucking buy that book if you're a Kiss fan. Or if you want to know more about Kiss, pick up the Paul Stanley book. It's fantastic. I refer to it as the ultimate encyclopedia for all Kiss things. He doesn't need, he'll say it as it is, even if it doesn't put him in the best light. I don't say throw Gene under the bus, because Gene even talks about in his book, like, Gene, in the 80s, Gene really kind of not failed Kiss, but he really didn't have Kiss as his number one priority. And Paul Stanley had to really hold that band together and should really get as much credit as possible for that. But he also talks about kind of, almost track by track on a lot of the albums in a much better way than I ever could, because he was there. So anyway, go check out his book. It's fucking awesome. But back to the strangest song on the album, "Going Blind." I do think the melody, because I got to talk about something that's not the fucking subject matter of this. I think the melody and the vocal performance is really strong. Gene, it's kind of a Gene heavy album where, the first album I was really talking about how Peter Criss does a great job drumming, and how, I was kind of surprised re-listening to it at how kind of powerful his drums were and how great his fills were. And just being really steady. Listening to this album again and prep for this, Gene's vocals and his songwriting abilities, I think, are coming out to be pretty strong on this album, because the production does lend to the dark moodiness of it. So, and Gene, obviously, with his voice and his obsession with comics and horror films, the early 1930s, 40s horror films, really shines through. So again, I dig that strained kind of Gene vocal throughout the song. And it's a highlight of mine on the Unplugged album. It really strong version that they play on the Unplugged album. I think the chorus also really shines when Paul kind of comes in. Whenever Paul and Gene are singing, it's kind of like, and people are going to go like, "What are you talking about?" But it's kind of like the Queen thing, where Brian May had a naturally mid-register voice. Brian May had a naturally lower voice. Freddie had more of a naturally mid-range voice, but can kind of go all over the place. And Roger Taylor had more of the higher registry. The super high notes that you hear are almost every single time going to be Roger Taylor. So when they sang together on a song like Bohemian Rhapsody with 100 plus overdubs of just vocals, it sounded huge. So I think that Paul and Gene work where Paul obviously is the much higher register and Gene has that lower, darker voice. So when Paul comes in on "Going Blind" to sing along with Gene and Peter's in it as a backing vocal as well, it works. It works really well. But like I said, the line "I'm 93, you're 16" is I guess something only Kiss can get away with, like in a mainstream rock setting. But again, most people don't listen to lyrics anyway, so fuck it. But I actually do think "Going Blind" is a pretty great Kiss song, subject matter aside, because it's just so weird. But again, I think the song's pretty rocking. So the next track we get is the title track, "Hotter Than Hell." Great riff, sexy riff, heavy riff. It's one of the all-time great Kiss riffs, in my opinion. Written by Paul. And once again, you get backing vocals from Gene and Peter. And this is one where I'll kind of give Peter's props on this one, like I did in the first. I feel like his drums are pretty strong, but they suffer pretty hardcore from the production on this one, especially. They sound like I don't know. It's not like Saint Anger stuff, but it sounds like they're just barely there, and it's a bummer because this song just is straight driving rock and roll, and you don't really get to feel it. So again, listen to the live version. But again, it does have a great groove of a track. It's a staple for them. I think it's appeared on a lot of their live greatest hits compilations, all that kind of stuff. You'll see "Hotter Than Hell" there, not just because it's the title track, although maybe they put it on there because they're like subconsciously buy "Hotter Than Hell," but because I think it's a great song actually overall. But I do remember learning this song on the guitar, and I was like thinking I was the coolest fucking dork of all time because I knew how to play "Hotter Than Hell" because it's a fairly simple song, the main riff, verse and chorus, but it's just got that great groove to it. And you get the classic Paul going, "Come on," like right before the solo. That's just a Paul Stanleyism that is just classic. That the kind of thing that he's always kind of singing like it's a live show. Even though it's a studio performance. I've always dug that. And of course, if I'm talking about a live, almost every single time. Although I think later on there's one track that I say the studio version is almost just as good as the Alive version. We'll get there. But for this one, "Hotter Than Hell," I think the Alive version shines. Again, it's that sexy kind of Kiss, Paul Stanley strutter, not the song, but just vibe that he gives off. Gene's bass is actually really prevalent during the chorus, which is kind of cool. For any bass heads out there, Gene's not. He's not the all-time great bassist of all time, but he's exactly what Kiss needs, and it really shows, I think, really strongly in "Hotter Than Hell." You'll hear it there. And then I remember as a kid, there's the twist throughout this. There's a twist in the song where, the main character, the narrator, Paul Stanley, I guess, talks about taking this girl home or fall in love with this girl, wanting to do all kinds of things and whatnot, and he notices the wedding band. And it's like the mic drop moment where he's like, "Oh shit!" But I remember as a kid, I thought that was kind of cool that there's a little twist that he tries to take this woman home and she's been married the whole time. Excuse me. But the next track we get is "Let Me Go Rock and Roll," the only single for the album. I feel like again it's a lack of faith thing where they're like, this single's not doing balls, and the Casablanca Records has to be freaking out. And like I said, Kiss, the Kiss HQ, man, they had to be really worried, because the sad thing is, I think "Let Me Go Rock and Roll" is a pretty strong track. Again, more so than maybe any of the other versions we're going to be talking about studio wise. The Alive version shreds the studio version. The Alive version is one of the greatest 5-6 minutes of rock and roll you'll ever hear. Not just in Kiss history, but just rock and roll history. It's astounding. They got the kind of extended guitar solos, dueling guitar solos, and just the jam of it is just so fucking awesome. But anyway, like I said, only single on the album, written by Paul and Gene, and the Alive version, like I said, is longer than the studio version because they would have this kind of extended jam that they would do live because it's just so fucking cool, man. It's just such a great groove that they got going on throughout it. And I remember when I saw them live a couple years ago, excuse me, they played this fairly early on, which kind of surprised me because I always thought this was more of a closing number because on Alive it's the last track. Anyway, I remember I called my brother and held the phone up, which is probably like pointless because he probably couldn't hear shit because it was so loud and crazy, but I held it up anyway for the whole song so he could kind of hear the song because that's a song that we grew up just jamming to, air guitaring to, was "Let Me Go Rock and Roll" from Alive. So it was kind of cool. I don't know, like I said, if you fucking heard anything, but it was one of my favorite Kiss live moments was to finally see them play the song and so early on, and then still have that energy for the rest of the show. It's just one of the greatest jams of all time. And the cool thing is, it's kind of a precursor to "Rock and Roll All Night" and "Shout It Out Loud." It doesn't really have necessarily the back and forth of Shout It Out Loud or the iconic nature of Rock and Roll All Night. But I feel like it does kind of have dual Gene and Paul lead vocals, which is one of their greatest weapons. So you got that going for it. And it's got some of the finest Ace lead guitar work like you'll ever hear. So, and you also get the beginning of the rock and roll, and they kind of, kick into not like because again, the production is kind of crappy. So it's kind of like really thin, but it's still, you can tell that they're having a good time. And like this song was written for them just to jam out on stage, and it works every time you hear it. Any version you'll ever hear live or even in the studio, with the production being what it is, it's one of the all-time highlights of the album, and I think one of the all-time great Kiss rock and roll numbers, which is like when anyone's ever like, Kiss isn't one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, listen to Rock and Roll, Let Me Go Rock and Roll Live, off of Alive. It'll shut them up. So anyway, the next track is a song called All the Way, which isn't really a song etched in history, as they would say. There's a couple tracks that aren't like super well known on here. I feel like the Kiss debut has some more well known tracks on it, but this one, you get the classic, almost cliche, the 1, 2, 3, 4, count in. Gene writes it. Some solid drum work by Peter. Finally, the production kind of shows it off a little more. The riff is, I remember just writing in the fucking notes here, the riff is very Gene in all caps, which is like kind of that just that real heavy vibe to it. But I actually, the thing about Gene is he loves to get to the big chorus. So the verse is kind of just thin and whatever, but then you get to the chorus and it's kind of like big and in your face. And I actually feel like this could have been a single. Now, because obviously Kiss was having problems and no one was really buying it, figuratively and literally, there's obvious reasons why they didn't make it a single. But I feel like in just kind of the catchy vibe, to get your toe tapping, listening to it on the radio or something, in a perfect world, All the Way could have been a single. And again, solid solo work from Ace. But like I said, it's mostly a forgotten Kiss track. But at the end of the day, it's catchy. It's worth a listen. It's not one of those ones Sam and I talk on his Beatle podcast about sometimes just having to skip a track. Because it's not like a massive compilation greatest hits or on a live or anything, I still think it's one of those ones worth a listen. There's a song or two later on that you could probably just skip, but we'll talk about it. And then the funniest thing about this song is I'm pretty sure it's about murder. Like I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure the song is about the girl driving the singer insane so much, Gene or whoever the narrator is that he's like, one day I'm just going to go all the way and kill this person. Maybe not. Maybe it's not that at all, but that's what I took. That's what I got from it. So anyway, Watching You is the next track. Written by Gene, sung by Gene. Like I said, it's a Gene heavy album, so if you like Gene and can suffer through some not so great production, it's a highlight of his. But great opening riff, a classic with a K, of course, all caps. And I love that you get a guitar riff after guitar riff after guitar riff. And also you get the thing where you get the guitar riff, and then how many times can I say guitar riff in a row? And then you get the bass following it. So you get the riff, and then the bass follows that guitar riff right afterwards. And it does it in this one. Harmonized and all, baby. But the verse is strong. Like I was saying with All the Way, the verse isn't the strongest thing about the album. You get to the chorus, and it's big time. But the verse is pretty strong, and just those multiple riffs driving you, and it fits with Gene's vocals really well. A strong track. And I think it has better production. I'll give props to. I think it has probably the best production on the album, I feel like, than some of the other tracks for sure. So it does kind of shine a bit. But like I said, I think this is the track that I would say the live version is great. It's strong. But I feel like props to Hotter Than the Hell. I feel like the studio version, in my opinion, is almost just as good as a live. Like, I know you guys are freaking out right now, me talking and even saying that. And even, yeah, I know. People are freaking out. The world has stopped for a moment, but catch your breath. We'll have a moment of silence again. Okay, there we go. Get your breath. Okay, we're good. We're back. No, seriously, though. I feel like this track is just as good as the Alive version, because I feel like it's a pretty strong track on Hotter Than Hell. One of the best. And I feel like the band is having fun on this one, where, some of the tracks, they seem tired and slow and almost out of tune. This one, I feel like they're really firing on all cylinders. And you actually get some real range from Gene vocally on this one. He kind of always sticks to kind of the lower register, but you get him kind of going all over the place, and it works. And you get some kind of you get like a really cool jam that they have, like a kind of extended solo jam before that last chorus, and it's just fucking great. And then one thing I always liked, it worked really well on the Alive track, and it works well on this, but especially Alive when they would play it in front of people, is all throughout the song Gene would yell, watching you, and the last time he screams watching us, which I always thought was a cool little thing that kind of lets you in like the fourth wall, like everyone's watching this band on stage. And I think Peter Criss kind of lets us scream though too, because Peter Criss has a great raspy singing voice. So the next track, speaking of pizza, Paul writes it. It's called Mainline, but instead of Paul singing lead, we get Peter for the first time. That's right, we get Peter for the first time. We also get cowbell. It's the worst impression. More cowbell. We get cowbell on this track. We get, but I like literally in the notes here. I'm gonna read to you exactly what I wrote here. I'm not even gonna try to go off. Okay, here we go. Cowbell in all caps. Kind of a generic rock song, because it is. I really love Peter's vocals, but they sound out of place on this album for some reason. Maybe because the song is just okay, not one of my favorites. And then this, I actually wrote this in here just as like a little to win some people back, just in case I lost them. Sorry if you've been listening to this podcast to hear me talk about Mainline, but there are going to be some songs that there just isn't much to talk about. That's seriously the fucking note I have for this, because it's like a nothing song. I'm sorry. Mainline is a nothing song for me for Kiss. That's all I got to say about it. Though, I guess it's got cowbell and Peter sings lead for it on the first time. That's all I got to say about it. Next track, Coming Home. Co-written by Paul and Ace. Isn't that weird? You don't get a lot of that going on, but you get Paul and Ace writing a song together. Like I said, not something you see every day. Paul, of course, takes the lead, though, because Ace is still working to get there to finally sing Shock Me on Love Gun. That's going to be we're going to throw a fucking parade on this podcast when we get to Love Gun. He finally sings for the first time. It's going to be fantastic. But this is, it's not as bad as Mainline. Mainline just is nothing. But again, it suffers from the production on this one, especially in the beginning. I talked about or wrote about how it kind of sounds like a Misfits song in the beginning, but the muddy kind of like, I'm not going to say amateur because these guys are professionals. They're the guys producing it, but like. I like it works for the Misfits when it sounds kind of shitty, if you know what I'm saying, especially early Misfits. Like that's kind of the part of the charm of that early punk Misfits stuff. Not really for Kiss, but I will say once the vocals kicks in, Paul really does carry kind of a poorly produced track into something much better. So I got to give him props to that. We're on we don't hear a lot of Paul on this one. We hear more of Gene, and even the Paul we've heard isn't like debut Kiss album era Paul. But this is a song where I feel like his vocals kind of swoop in to save the day, because it's kind of not great. But his vocals really help save it. I do like the kind of descending riff thing, which is more of a Geneism that he uses. But Paul, co-writing with Ace, they throw it in there. It really works well. And yeah, Paul just sounds more energized on this track. Obviously they don't record it all in one day and record it, necessarily in order. But maybe it's because the album's almost over. That's why he's just feeling ready to rock and go out. And because this is an album that shines when they play the stuff live. Like I said, it shows on a live, that it works in a live setting and they build an army. But the problem is the people that go see him at, in Detroit or in, California or in New York or whatever, they buy the album and they're like, what the fuck is this? This isn't the band I just saw on stage. Because Kiss has this devoted audience that they created with such an unholy, just rock and roll show. But there are moments on this album that work. But again, it's more of an album that I think live it works much better. Which brings us to the last track, Strange Ways. Another kind of weird pairing on this, written by Ace, sung by Pizza. Now, Ace and Peter are kind of best friends in that classic era of Kiss. Paul and Gene, when I was a kid, I figured they were like the best friends in the world. Like nothing got between, Paul and Gene. Reading their books, though, I kind of got the vibe that Paul and Gene kind of hate each other when they first met. And I think even Gene was talking about how I could see how you probably thought I was a dick. But Ace and Peter were actually like buddies, for better or for worse. I think because of the drugs and alcohol, and so when Peter leaves / gets fired, that'll be a whole other thing to talk about. I think it really hurt Ace. I think it really hurt the friendship, and I think it also really hurt him just caring about being in Kiss anymore. So it's nice, even though Strange Ways isn't like a great song, it's nice to see that these two buddies kind of put a song out together. It is a heavy and slow number, where Ace usually writes mid-tempo to faster kind of rock tracks, kind of like Parasite. It is kind of a slower, heavier number. But like I said, it figures because you got the guy who writes it is a guitar player, the lead guitar player, and the guy who sings is the drummer. So I guess that's why. I guess that's why that happened. I don't know, but it's fine. Really, it's not anywhere near as a powerhouse closer as say Black Diamond was on their first album, debut album. Excuse me. But it is interesting that both closers are sung by Peter Criss. But we get credited some backing vocals from Ace. And like I said, we'll get there soon enough with the lead stuff, but that's really hotter than hell. It's a real kind of quick album, and the unfortunate thing is that the thing that it's most well known for is kind of the production mishap or lack thereof, with the production, and also the fact that fucking Ace Frehley, like half his face is fucked and he can't put his makeup on, so they have to airbrush it on the fucking cover, man. Like, it's not a good time to be in Kiss right now. Like, it's looking pretty grim. And the next album that we're going to talk about, next month, I'm going to be bringing on a buddy of mine that I met when I was working at the comic shop. Big Dread fan, Superman fan, all the good stuff. And he came up, I was playing Kiss in the shop one day, and he came up and was like, "You like Kiss?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." And he's like, "What's your favorite album?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'll talk about it, later when I get him on, and we actually talk about the album." But he was like, "Dressed to Kill is my favorite album," and so he was the first person I thought about when I was trying to get people to get on here, because me just talking about myself is fucking boring, man. I'm just reading notes, talking bullshit. I got Batman v Superman on the brain because we're going to see that later. Like, that's honestly what I got going on. So.
If I may interject real quick, this is Chris, the producer. You
That's
probably
right.
know me from the Geek Out proper.
He has to sit here and suffer through me talking to myself.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. It's not mainline.
I enjoy Kiss. Yeah, I did. For whatever reason.
Yeah.
I'm not going to apologize for myself, and I'm not going to explain myself.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, when you were talking about going blind and the creepy, 93 year old thing, it sparked a thing in me, and I wanted to be a Kiss apologist.
Okay.
Because I was like, I feel like the line is more hyperbole than fact.
Okay.
And I don't know why I felt the need to jump on mic. But just in case, one person who agrees with me is ready to angrily tweet you.
Yeah.
So more of because I've been in this situation. I work at places with a lot of younger girls, and I'm a very flirtatious person.
Yes.
But then when I find out
You're
one of the
giving me
girls
eyes
is
right now,
right?
Yeah.
But when I find out that one of the girls is right at 18 or whatever, I'm like, oh, I can't do this. I'm ancient and she's a baby. That's what it harkens to, at least for me. Just the kind of hey girl, you're a child still, and I'm a full grown man. They're going to the extremes.
Yeah.
But then, while you were talking, the reason why I waited until the end was because I did hop on Wikipedia and do some research. The song is credited to, I believe it said Gene Simmons and then Stephen Coronel.
Yeah.
Who was a co-writer on both She and Going Blind for riffs.
Yeah.
Found out 2014 he was arrested for possession or uploading child pornography. So, you know what? Maybe it is true.
It could be very literal. Like I said, the line, the Kiss lore is...
He's only 65 right now.
There you go. So he's got, what,
30-ish?
33 years... Or,
27
yeah.
years?
Fucking math on the
28.
spot. Yeah. I did it to myself. But, it's... the Kiss lore is that Paul came up with the line, but yeah, it's a weird one. But no, I'm glad you came on, and
that's all the interjection.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. But yeah, we're gonna have my buddy Kyle on next episode, so it's not gonna be just rambling like a madman for however long this episode is. And okay, and yeah, we're like I said, I'm psyched for Batman v Superman. It has nothing to do with Kiss.
Yeah, but
I'm fucking psyched for that movie, man. Like I know it's getting less than stellar reviews, but like my thing was like people were trying to tell me like, hey man, look at the shitty reviews, and I wanted to be like, dude, I've been waiting for this movie since I was 5. You think like a shitty like Rotten Tomato score is going to keep me from seeing Batman v Superman?
Some kids' review of it before the movie's even officially released.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah. I mean, granted, by the time this episode posts tomorrow,
I could hate it.
Yeah,
and that's fine. My thing is, I'm not going in there with blind faith, going it's going to be the greatest movie of all time. I'm going in there because I'm going to make my own fucking opinion of the movie. Yeah.
Going in there without high expectations, but also without low expectations. You're just going in there waiting for the movie to tell you what it's like.
Yeah, I was to bring it back to Kiss kind of for a second. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my brother, who's going to be on the show, which I'm very excited about for at least 2 episodes. And he's a massive Batman fan. Could probably give a shit about Superman, but massive Batman fan. And I was like, yeah, Mick, you're going to be seeing Batman v Superman? He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I'll try to see this weekend. I was like, yeah, people are really dogging it with reviews. And he's like, hey, we get a new Batman on the big screen. That's all I need. And I was like, there you go, man. Bring it back. Bring it back. And the fact that we get to see what Cavill's Superman is like,
and we finally get Wonder Woman on the big screen.
I can't wait, dude. I will say I haven't read reviews, like detailed stuff. I don't want to know anything.
Yeah.
So this isn't a spoiler because we know she's in the movie, obviously, because the trailers. They said that in the premiere, like the big premiere they did in New York, the biggest crowd reaction by far was when she shows up.
Nice.
So I'm very much looking forward to that. I kind of dig, like I said, this is my fucking podcast. We talk about whatever we want. Yeah. But so
Kiss meets Batman vs Superman.
Kiss meets Batman v Superman. Oh, and also here's how I'll tie it in for the people sitting there going, "You motherfucker, you stop it." Gene Simmons is a massive comic book fan. Like he's in the Superman documentary Up and Away. So there we go. That's how we're locking this together. He's in the fucking movie. He's in the documentary. He wanted to be Superman. But no, you had a look of.
Well, just real quick, it's something tangential.
Yeah.
But I know I'm already signed up to do.
You want to do a commentary for Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Fan? Yeah. If you can provide, I ain't spending money on that shit. If you can provide the movie, I'll do a commentary with you for that movie.
Yeah.
We'll throw it in because we're gonna be doing. I'm gonna be doing this for years. I mean,
if you're gonna be doing unpainted, unmasked,
if
you will, then let's fucking do the movie.
Let's do the movie, dude.
Yeah.
And we'll do it. We'll make it a Halloween release.
Yes.
There you go. See, that's why we keep talking. That's why we keep talking on this podcast. So we just get more. We get more news. We get breaking news to you guys on the podcast as you listen to it.
By the way, I already have a copy of it.
Oh well, then we're definitely doing it. Do you have it on Laserdisc? Oh, okay. It'd probably be a nightmare on Laserdisc.
It's like $500 on Laserdisc.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's like one of the golden.
I looked
one of the golden things.
I looked about buying. Yeah, it's a very rare. Yeah.
Jesus.
Hear more of this on my monthly show, Laserdicks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but yeah, seriously. Yeah, we're just gonna. Listen to. Here's something. Listen to Laserdicks. Excuse me. You guys' little jingle in the beginning is the thing that just fucking warms my heart.
And this month is a very special episode because it's my birthday month.
There you go.
I've got a big treat for everybody.
That's right. I know what it is, and I know that Laserdick fans are going to be excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Especially true fans.
True fans,
like
yeah.
Josh.
True fans like Josh. And speaking of Josh, Reminiscent Evil, the best podcast name in the history of podcast names. Check his shit out too.
Apparently, I'm right up there with Doug Benson with titles.
Is he good with titles?
Yeah. Well, so he's the one that came up with James Bonding.
Oh, he is.
And like the episode that he was on of James Bonding, like they just spent like half an hour talking about how amazing it was that he came up with that title, and I was like, bitch, I got Reminiscent Evil.
Yeah, Reminiscent Evil's the shit. And also, we had that Just Us Society. The name of the Geek Out episode when we weren't doing an interview. I thought that was fucking clever.
I wanted to high five Samuel.
For that one. And then speaking of Sam, I've mentioned it before, but Sam is nice enough, and I'm going to have him on the show for an album or two here to have me on his I Want to Tell You podcast talking about all the Beatles albums. So that's kind of the Geek Out solo stuff we got. Of course, we also have Catching Up. I always just refer to it as Geek Out, but like Catching Up, I guess, is the official title.
Yeah, they're all Geek Out.
Geek Out.
It's like, but it's like the Nerdist. The Nerdist has a podcast called The Nerdist, but it's also a network.
Yeah. So yeah, it's catching up. And then we also have our commentaries. At the time this drops tomorrow, we've just finished up in terms of putting out the Superman movies. So Man of Steel came out this past Monday, correct?
Yeah.
And this coming Monday is what? Oh, that's right. We'll just keep it a secret.
Yeah,
you guys will be surprised.
Yeah, you'll see
for the
on
next
Monday.
one. It's a long franchise, fairly long franchise.
It's not the longest one we have this year.
we don't pick short franchises.
Once we get all these franchises done, then we'll just
that's
in
true.
like 3 years.
Like in 3 years,
it'll just be all single. It will be like, what do we want to do?
Because
we've
done all the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Not Ant-Man, right? We did it up to Cap
probably
2.
Guardians.
Was Guardians the last one before? Okay.
Yeah, because Ant-Man had like just come out. Like it hadn't come out on video yet.
Right on.
But it was also tangentially connected to Age of Ultron, so we weren't worried.
Another thing that bring it back to fucking Kiss here. Doctor Strange is coming out this year.
Oh yeah.
And Kiss is a big fan of Doctor Strange. Gene Simmons, and look where the fucking
devil
horn thing comes from. Doctor Strange. All right, this has been another episode of Kiss My Podcast. Next week, Dress to Kill. Stay safe, I guess. Bye.